Here's something that's fun to do that you'll always notice there's at least one you forget. Try to memorize all your girlfriend's names beginning to end and see if you can remember their first and last names. There'll always be one you forget. The one I'm trying to get is Liz. Now, I had her last name and she's the one I wanted to remember the most, but I still couldn't get it. I know it's another one of those mix. There's only two mix I know. I know it was Liz and, oh my god, how can I remember Rob? It's Rob, Mick. Oh, God, I hate calling everybody McLovin. Having that McLovin shit in my head fucks up all the mix. Anyways, there's only two Micks I ever was friends with, and that's Rob and Liz. So the last name I'm already messed up on, but Liz, that's not even her real. Elizabeth isn't her first real name. It's. Oh my God, I want to say it's. Oh, it'll come to me. See, that's the one that I got stuck on. Anyways, I got Christina Stiers all the way in New Mexico. I got Caroline. I don't even think I ever got her last name. Is it okay to have sex with somebody with a condom if you don't even know their last name? See, that's why I don't believe in having sex for the first 2 years anymore until you get to know somebody, because of that fucking shit. When I was 19, all the way back to about 16, I was interested in getting laid more than anything else. And I used condoms, by the way, at that time. And I still use them today. There's been very few cases that I haven't used a condom. There was one girl on birth control, and she's never had a boyfriend before, so I didn't have to worry about diseases because nobody would date her. She was too cryy, bubbly and cryy. And her father used to beat her, so she was very cryy and had a lot of daddy issues. But there wasn't, and her eye was crooked and stuff like that. But if you could get her not to be cryy, she actually did have a maturity about her you could bring out. And I was going to cultivate that, and it was getting very good. But I had to get her to understand her medical situations that I didn't even understand. So I couldn't do that for her at that point. So the trick was to get her into her own apartment and get her away from her father so she wouldn't feel afraid and anxiety all the time. And then we would work on the work slowly, seeing as she couldn't hold a job, and I'm willing to do anything that anybody ever asked me to do for multiple hours. I mean, when her father said, "Do you want to work?" I'm like, "Yeah." I still had my foot swollen from a nail. I mean, oh my God. Now, I also did have a needle go through my foot before years later. So I've had my right foot stabbed on two different occasions. Once by a nail when I was about, oh God, 22. And then again, I got stabbed by a needle out in the woods. And then guess what? Until I told them what they wanted to hear, I was having what they call infection fever or something. I guess the needle had bacteria on it. Luckily, nothing else. I had them test for everything because I was walking and I was not exactly good with feet. I was wearing sandals at the time. I ended up sliding down a hill to go smoke some weed with my buddy. When sliding down the hill, a needle hit me. Not where you do drugs or anything, but it still hit me kind of in between the toes, but not where there's a vein or you do drugs. Trust me, I know all about needles. I know all about it. And between the toe thing is awful. That's bullshit. That's just something that people make up. That's called skin popping, by the way. And if you skin pop in your feet, oh boy, would you have, oh, it's the most painful thing in the world. Nobody skin pops in the feet but totally crazy people. Even me, I would feel that. I have numbness on the skin level, but if I injected deeper where the muscle tissue is doing a skin pop in between the toes, oh, what you're thinking is in between the fingers. People don't actually go in between the toes. unless maybe like one time if they're not a real addict, but they couldn't do it, and it's not something that's really done. It's something that asshole rich people think is done. No, real addicts, if they're gonna skin pop, they go in the ass, cheek, shoulder, sometimes the belly, sometimes the side of the leg, because it still doesn't leave a mark. You can easily go on the side of the leg or underneath your knee or someplace like that, and you don't need to do it. I know fat people who skin popped behind the knee many times. It's just something common. If you're going to have to live on the streets, in the woods, you're going to see the craziest fucking shit. I saw people behind dumpsters doing crazy vinegar shit. I've seen people doing that outside, inside their apartments. I've seen crazy ass people doing crazy ass shit, but I had no choice. It's not like I could go back to my apartment. That requires me being able to go to the doctor. Now I have an apartment. Is there any crazy people injecting shit here? Fuck no. Nobody's allowed in my apartment. Once in a blue moon, I'll let one person in my apartment if my roommate allows it, but they have to have a camera on them all night, and I don't want it. I just don't have anybody allowed in my apartments anymore. It's me and one other roommate or one other person that's allowed. One other person that I pick out. That's it. I wouldn't even let my family in the door up here anymore. My nephew, yeah. But at this point, no. I have done everything I can for those people. And now they want to still kill me. 25 years of them sucking me dry. My father sucked my name dry. And if he doesn't believe it, just talk about Social Security. How much did Zach collect in Social Security in his life? Well, his father collected a shitload in his name. Now, why is that a big deal? Because it's connected to made up disabilities. I don't care about the money. I care about the stories at the doctors. That's important to understand right there. Okay? That is important to understand. For my father to collect money in my name like that, he has to have a reason to tell the state. So he let his wife go loose and crazy, knowing it would be easier to collect money. He never questioned it. He never even did anything about it. Because if he did, maybe he wouldn't be able to get the money. And then when it was time to give up the money to me to give to a program that is for kids 18 to 27 who are on Social Security like me, my father decided he was going to enrich himself. Again, I don't care about the money. I care about my livelihood, the fact that my father is lying to me and stealing. But does he stop there? No. Then my mother's going nuts seeing shadow people keeping me up at night doing crazy things. And I'm trying to deal with this with what? Cough medicine again? Maybe some weed? That's not great. But I'm dealing with it as my mother berates me, makes up stories about me, tries to say I'm some psycho kid some more, as my father goes along with this. And and does he back out on his part of the deal? Of course he does. He backs out on his part of the deal. The lawyer calls me and says my father backed out. He's refusing to pay or some bullshit like that. All we know is the lawyer dropped out the last minute because of something my father did. The lawyer said, talk to my father why I'm dropping out. Why is every time somebody fucks me over, they say, talk to my father? I called Dan Beaudry. Can you bring me to see my dying mother? I would, but I can't. Ask your father why. A lawyer calls me. Hey, your father's stealing. Sorry, the lawyer calls me and says, hey, you have an inheritance that your mother left you, but your father you need to talk to because something's going on with him, because you need to claim your inheritance, but your father's doing something, and I'm his lawyer, and blah, blah, blah. So I asked my father why this lawyer is calling me again. Once again, my father is fucking me. Why is it every time anybody tells me I'm fucked on the phone, the next words out of their mouth is ask your father why? Hey, why don't, when I was a kid in Haverhill, and every month I would ask why I'm being punished to a room, not allowed to go clothing shopping with the other kids. You know what they would tell me? Ask your father. I'm getting fucked to my room. I'm missing out on McDonald's every month, having to eat a canned good out of the cabinet because there's no staff to stay back. The staff members are supposed to be bringing the kids clothing shopping. But my father has refused to go along with the program. Instead, he wants the money for himself every month. He'll bring me clothing shopping twice a year or whatever. He'll buy me clothing. Who cares if the kids are making fun of him at school? Who cares if the kids call him the raggedy kid? As long as I get my vacations, who cares if he's made fun of? Again, when I ask the program why I have to be the raggedy kid, why do I got to be in my room every month, not allowed to go clothing shopping? Every kid in this program gets a clothing check. Why don't I get a clothing check? Because I do. My father gets my clothing check. He just keeps it every month and then tries to act like an accountant, trying to subtract here, subtract there. Oh, we can go without this, he can go without that, trying to make more money back than he's losing. So, once again, when I ask the staff members in the program why I'm having to do this, they say, you're getting fucked. Why don't you ask your father? Why don't you ask your father? Why don't you ask your father? Why is it every time I'm getting fucked by somebody, they say, ask my father? Then I'm going to the doctors now, age 32. I need to return back to work. And I'm trying to deal with the doctors. And once again, I have to ask my father why. There's so many made-up statements from my childhood on my medical record. And I'm asking my father, why did you let your wife make up so many fucked up stories about me that were all based on nothing but regular child stuff? A child plays with matches. Oh my God, he's burning my house down. A child has a neurological disorder and he's bumping in the furniture. He's a self-harmer. He jumps in a pool and gets injured in a pool accident like any normal child. Oh, he's a self-harmer and he's suicidal. Why are you letting your wife say these things at the doctor's office permanently? This does not get magically disappeared. If you're homicidal and you're a homicidal maniac that hurts animals at age 14, then you're a homicidal maniac that hurts animals at 20. That doesn't change. If you were put in the prison because you're some weirdo that does crimes, you still have that on your record when you turn 19. It doesn't clear up when it comes to medical records. If you're in a wheelchair, you're in a wheelchair for life. If you magically get better at 18, then yeah, they'll clear out those records and figure out why. But it's not like medical problems just disappear unless those medical problems are made up. If your mother is trying to confuse doctors, making up a bunch of mental illnesses, drugging their child silly. Because don't forget, I didn't have a day of rest every minute from age 5 all the way on to 20. Oh my God, I was drug silly. Except for when I was in Texas and New Mexico and Maine. Those 4 years or so, there was very little drugs. But not because my mother didn't try. My mother still tried to drug me silly. It's just Texas was the only state smart enough to know, hey, this woman's a little unstable here. Look at all the drugs she's asking for to give to her son. She doesn't even know the first thing about these illnesses. She has no idea what's going on. She's a complete lunatic. And lots of people knew this that had half a brain. But see, my father knew nothing. He didn't have a brain when it came to medical conditions. My mother could be shoving a hot red poker up my ass, and my father would be in the other room. Okay, have fun with Zach up there. I mean, she could be drugging me with pills, slipping me pills until I'm sick, vomiting on a holiday. And my father would be like, oh, Zachary's sick? Fine. No, he doesn't need to go out for Christmas or Halloween or nothing. Yeah. I could literally be suddenly sick without being allowed to go to the doctors. And my father would think that's normal, that I'm getting sick, and then I'm not sick, and then I am sick, and then I'm not sick every time my mother gives me pills. It's very obvious my mother had Munchausen syndrome, and I'm a victim of that. And it's hard for me to memorize these things. Now, I hope that gave more information, but I gotta stop these videos. I'm gonna try to do as many as I can until Monday. Tuesday, like I said, the sheriff will be at my door, or I can maybe get an extension for a couple days. But they're gonna file it on Tuesday, and then the sheriff is on his way. And I don't have any way to lift real stuff. And this is just impossible. It's impossible. I'm set up to die. I mean, what am I going to do? hold a gun to the doctor's head and say, "Give me the paperwork already so I can go back to work. Come on, give it to me. Give me the surgery already." What am I going to do? Hold a gun to my father's head and say, "Admit to the truth already. Tell the truth to the right people already." What am I going to do? Take a machine gun and go to my family one by one and say, "Tell the truth. Yes, tell the truth. Write it down." No, that's not going to help. No, they have to be committed in this. This has to be their choice. So instead, I can just die, well, giving them the curse. They can live a long life in pain too. And then they can understand how bad this is. Most of them had their good years. They were able to have children. They don't need to have their testicles. My testicles were fried, and I never even got to have children. My body is fried, and I'm in my 30s. In my childhood, I was suffering. In my teenage years, I was suffering. I tried to cope with that by treating myself with cough medicine and alcohol and things like that. That was stupid of me. Now I know what to do. Either do the right thing and get treatment like I'm trying to do now, well, requires the doctors knowing that this is real, knowing that this has to be treated, or my family tries to kill me, cut off all my doctors for another 10 years while I try to survive in the woods like Rambo, and I go to track each one of them down and just shoot a fucking crossbow from the woods into their fucking leg, laced with some crazy ass shit. And then 4 years later, they have a weird disease, and doctors don't even know how to treat them because these people don't know what the fuck it is. So then they suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer until they're about 60 and they die a little early. Hey, at least they got a bunch of years. You know, you got to have children, you got to have your good years, you got to have a job, then you got poisoned in your 50s or 60s, then you died at like 65, 70. That's a lot better than being born normal, having ADHD, going through foster care, then meeting a mother, having her give you an overdose, suffering greatly. Doctors and teachers try to help you, but then the mother goes nuts. She tries to cut off the teachers and doctors, yells at them, but they don't cut off. They keep on trying to help the child. So then the mother puts him in ballet, but they're still not listening. The mother's still trying to convince the doctors to stop trying to help the child, but it's not working. It's all a big fight. The teachers know what they're seeing. They know what's going on, so they're advocating for the child. But then the mother, she still knows that something is going on herself, so she's trying to take evasive action. And she got plenty of time. She got a year or 2 or 3 years before the real charges come, so she can figure something out. A little time goes by, and a job offer comes for her husband. Her husband is not going to take the job. That's in Texas. That's like a downgrade. I don't want it. But then the wife goes, "Oh, I want it. I want it. We need a new life. Yeah, I want a new life. Yeah, yeah. I want a change in scenery and I want a new start," were her exact words. When she was asked why, she always said, "I want a change in scenery or it'll be a good new start." Something like that. But when you look at the facts, it's completely understandable that my mother, after crippling a child with drugs and slipping up with medication, and then purposely drugging him during an adoption, and then drugging him during a Halloween thing, would want to bring him out of state and restart in Texas, where they probably won't file charges for extradition order. I don't think they'll extradite my mother for Texas for drugging or destroying an orphan's body. I'm pretty sure she's safe once when she crossed the border and got a new home. But then in Texas, the doctors there hear about it. So then the doctors in Texas could file charges. Oopsie, if the doctors in Texas file charges, then she's in trouble again. Because, yeah, Massachusetts knows about it through the teachers and the doctors, but they only know bits and details. They know I had a sudden change. They know my mother had some allergy attack going on in her household. They know she adopted me. They know she's acting very unstable. She's jealous of the kid's toys. There's a lot of complaints from the kid. The mother's acting very unstable at times. They're getting complaints all left and right. But now they're in Texas. My mother says, "Oh, I'm safe because Massachusetts those records won't follow me over here. Those records can't come all the way to Texas. I'll just ignore that those records exist." But then I speak up in Texas about I want help with my movements and my coordination issues. And I had some weird allergy attack all the way back in Massachusetts, and it did some weird stuff to my body, and I want to know what that is. And then my mother gets mad at me. You can clearly see it. She comes up with a bunch of lies. I don't remember. I don't think that. I don't remember. I don't remember it. Stuff like that. Then in the car ride back, she obviously does remember it because she goes, "Why did you talk about that one issue?" She picks that out of the whole doctor's appointment. She picks out the one thing she remembers that she did wrong. And she wants to know why I mentioned it. I said, because it happened. And she goes, "Oh, that's right. It did happen." And then I'm like, "That's it? You want to know that? What? To see if I'm out to get you? See if I know what you're doing yet?" That's what it was. My mother wanted to know if I knew what she was doing. Okay, well, now my mother knows that the doctors know partly what's going on in Texas. They don't know fully, they only have the report of the allergy attack that she knows is really an overdose where she drugged me. My mother knows that I know now. So now she decides to put me in New Mexico. And now she's doing this as a fucking weird punishment craziness. She knows I don't have attachment disorder. She knows I'm getting more and more attached, and then she's pushing me more and more away. She knows this because I'm bringing her swimming medals and I'm trying to show her my accomplishments. But my mother's the one snatching shit away, calling me a liar and a thief, and this must belong to an African American and crazy shit like that. But I'm obviously getting attached. But then my mother's pushing me away, treating me like shit. That's why I'm getting more and more attached to my father, because he's not hurting me. Meanwhile, my mother I'm getting attached to, and then she pushes me away. And then I get attached, and then she hurts me. And then she pushes me away. Then my mother just keeps on doing this to the time where I'm like, I just don't want to deal with it. So then she puts me in New Mexico, erasing those teachers and erasing those doctors. Oh, yeah. Fuck Texas. Time for New Mexico. So I go from uh, Lawrence, St. Anne's to Westward, Mass. I go from Westward, Mass to Texas, El Paso. I go from El Paso, Texas to New Mexico. I go to a town in New Mexico called Villa Santa Maria to Algonquin, Maine, so my parents can buy and sell houses. I go from Algonquin, Maine to Chelmsford. I go to Chelmsford to Haverhill. I go to Haverhill to Lawrence. I go to Lawrence to Maine, Maine to Lawrence, Lawrence to Maine, where there's a lot of Maine shifted in there. We'll just call it a bunch of Maine. Then we got me going uh, back to Chelmsford. We go from Lawrence back to Chelmsford. Then I go from Chelmsford to Lowell. Then I go to Lowell to Haverhill. Then I go to Haverhill to Lawrence, back to Lowell. Then I go to Lowell to Florida and back to Lowell. Then I go to Lowell to New Hampshire. And there was a quick time where I went to Lowell to New Hampshire, back to Lowell. But it was just because Dan let me stay there for a very short amount of time. But my brother was trying to stay with Dan too on off and going time, so he didn't want two family members staying with him. He made that clear that my brother already overstayed his welcome. So my brother already used that pass, and that is my brother's friend. All right, so whatever. I mean, that is his friend, so I didn't mind one bit. But my brother used me as well as a lightning rod for his mother. Yes, his stepmother, Patricia, would have been arguing and fighting with him, with his son, constantly. If he tried to take him away, there would have been battles for grandparents' custody and grandparents' rights, and there would have been Seth getting harmed by her in secret, and then Seth crying that she's crazy, and then there would have been all these other problems. Instead, I was the lightning rod. Whenever my mother's Munchausen syndrome craziness, people are out to get me, or she just was not doing well at work, or she was out of work and she was acting lazy and she just wanted to stay home, or she just wanted to do something crazy at work, or she needed to go to therapy at work, or anything was going on in her life with me, I was her lightning rod. Anything. If I was showing my mother a swimming medal, she would turn that into a lightning rod situation where she would call me a bunch of names about my swimming medal and kill my self-esteem and my accomplishment. Now, I won that. I treaded water the longest out of all those other orphans. I won it. Nobody else treaded water longer than those other orphans. I didn't see my mother in that pool. I didn't see her in that pool at all. She wasn't in that orphanage in that pool. So why is she keeping it in her jewelry box against my will, telling doctors to drug me on my medal? Because she's the one that was mentally ill. My father's going nuts acting like a child, and he's letting his wife hurt children. That's a fucked up situation. Yes, my father let his wife hurt children. Absolutely. And if you don't believe me about that, that my mother hurt me, just talk to my nephew Seth. Ask him if he liked watching his uncle gets smacked around with a ruler. Now he's an older, he's probably sick of all this and he doesn't even want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, but if I don't, I die and many other people get hurt in the process. I mean, I can't support my family if I'm not allowed to ever see a doctor. What happens when I catch COVID? What happens when I catch the flu? Oh, that's right, they want me to work with COVID too. That's right, when I caught the flu during COVID, none of the doctors or hospitals would even listen to me. So I just worked while having the flu against my will. Against my will, by the way. If I tried not to, I had to live in the woods. They told me that very clear. If I wasn't going to work with the flu, I could just die and live in the woods. There were no programs for me because I am not human. My parents set me up where all the benefits that other people use, I'm not allowed to use. Social Security, it doesn't matter if I lose my arms and legs. I will never receive it. Can I go back to work? Not until we get me epilepsy medication and a diagnosis. My mother and father will never allow it. They'll never allow me to get better. They never allowed my physical health to get better as a child. They never allowed my physical health to get better as a teen. They never allowed my physical health to get better when I was in my 20s. They always were more interested in trying to make me out to be some crazy person that was going to rape somebody, or I'm going to murder somebody, or I'm going to take a gun and blast my brains out. Well, it's getting close to that. When I'm dying in the woods and all I want to do is live, but I'm dying a painful, slow death, yeah, I want it to be quicker. I want to just die already when I'm in that situation because there is nothing. There's nothing for me else to do but work for free. That's how I got this far. I just worked really hard for free, working hundreds of hours every week for free, giving it back to multiple different people. Yes, hundreds of hours every week in Lowell. And eventually, one of these people called me needing somebody to move in Rochester, New Hampshire, and they needed somebody to sign in for an apartment. Yes, that's all I could do was work for free all the time, and it would keep me out of the cold. Now, why didn't I use a shelter? I did. But they need paperwork from a doctor, and again, the doctors need paperwork and a medical history that is accurate, not a bunch of fantasies from my mother and father. And that's all they